Shocking truth: did God really create evil? Discover the biblical revelation at midnight. Midnight struck with a sudden jolt, slicing through the darkness like a knife. The clock tower loomed ominously in the distance, its loud chimes echoing through the quiet streets, masking the whispers that danced on the cool night air. Rumors had been swirling for weeks in the small town of Beacon Ridge, whispers of an ancient scripture revealing unthinkable truths about the nature of good and evil. People said that under the cloak of night, secrets would slither out from their hiding places, waiting to be unearthed. Elaine stood alone outside the old church, her heart pounding so hard it felt like it might leap from her chest. The moon hung low and eerie, casting ghastly shadows across the ground, as if the very earth held its breath, waiting for something monumental to happen. Each gust of wind sent chills racing down her spine, heightening her senses. The hairs on the back of her neck stood tall. She wasn't alone. Suddenly, she heard them, the faint sounds of rustling leaves and hushed voices creeping from the alley behind the church. It sent a wave of fear crashing over her, tightening her chest and stopping her breath. Were they the townsfolk, or something far more sinister? With each step, the air thickened like syrup, wrapping around her, pulling her deeper into a web of apprehension. Then, just as she was about to turn back, a figure emerged from the shadows. Dressed in dark robes, it moved with an unsettling grace. The figure raised a trembling finger, pointing directly at Elaine as if it had seen through her very soul. "It is time," it rasped, voice dripping with a chilling urgency. The figure seemed almost divine, yet there was something undeniably wicked about it, making her stomach twist with dread. As if on cue, distant thunder rumbled, shrouding the alley in an ominous glow. The townsfolk, who had gathered unknowingly to witness the unraveling of a mystery older than time, murmured in disbelief, clutching rosaries and each other, faces pale and wide-eyed. "What does it mean?" someone finally gasped, breaking the heavy silence. Before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads-up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The figure stepped forward, revealing a book encased in tattered leather, inscribed with symbols glowing faintly like embers. Elaine could hardly breathe. The book seemed to pulse with a life of its own, vibrating with an energy that beckoned her closer. "The revelation lies within," the figure murmured, eyes glittering like onyx. But what revelation could possibly unravel the truth of our existence? A shiver coursed through the crowd as they awaited the answer that could alter everything. Would they be ready for such a truth? In an instant, a flash of lightning illuminated the page, and it seemed as if the universe itself held its breath, waiting for the answer to spill forth into the restless night. What would they learn? What evil had been allowed to fester? Only time would tell. The air crackled with tension as Elaine stood frozen, mesmerized by the figure and the glowing book it held. The crowd shifted uneasily, eyes wide with a mix of horror and fascination. Whispers morphed into fervent prayers, each breath filled with a peculiar blend of fear and anticipation. "You must seek the truth," the figure declared, its voice a haunting melody. It slowly opened the book, unleashing a faint plume of smoke that twisted upward into the night sky. As words spilled from the yellowed pages, shadows danced, flickering as though they had a life of their own. The light revealed the members of the congregation, each face a canvas of emotion, shock, disbelief, and curiosity mingling in the streetlight-esque glow. Elaine's heart raced. What was this truth? Was it a blessing or a curse? Every fiber of her being screamed to retreat, yet the allure of the book's knowledge tugged at her. She could feel the weight of countless generations pressing upon her, a call to action that echoed through the very roots of her existence. The figure beckoned her closer, hand extended as if inviting her into an unholy dance. "Will you not know your origins? The world's foundation is built on duality, after all. Its voice was soothing yet sinister, sending shivers spiraling down her spine. A murmuring took over the crowd, voices overlapping in a clamor of confusion and fear. What does it mean? Is this true? We cannot allow this. Then, suddenly, a voice cut through the chaos. It was Reverend Miller, his familiar silhouette marked by bravado as he stepped forward. "This is blasphemy!" he shouted, his fists clenched. "We cannot entertain this darkness." The figure turned its gaze toward the Reverend, an amused glint lingering in its hollow eyes. "Ah, but it is the darkness that reveals the light, dear Reverend. You speak of good and evil as if they are opposites, yet they are intertwined, a masterpiece of creation." Silence fell upon the crowd, punctuated only by Elaine's ragged breathing. Could this dark figure speak wisdom disguised as peril? What if the truths hidden within the book shone a light on the darkness that enveloped her town? Suddenly, the ground trembled beneath them, the very roots of the earth reacting to the revelation that threatened to unveil itself. The townsfolk stumbled, clasping each other tighter, but Elaine found herself drawn forward, despite the chaos around her. The figure leaned closer, the book now flickering a fiery crimson light. "Will you accept the burden of knowledge? The choice is yours, Elaine. But be forewarned, knowing brings power, and a price." Elaine felt the sweat gather at her temples as she weighed the figure's words. A wave of desperation surged through her, the kind that comes with great responsibility. Was the truth worth the price? Would she risk it all to confront the emotions hidden deep within the souls of her neighbors or her own? Lightning flashed once more. In that moment of illumination, chaos erupted. A woman in the crowd shrieked, a figure thrashing out of the shadows, lunging toward the book, seemingly possessed. Elaine's heart plummeted as she realized the connotations of that desperate move. The figure's eyes widened, not with fear but with knowing anticipation, as if everything was unfolding according to a long-foreseen plan. "What lies within," it hissed, "is already unleashed." As we head into the unknown, the weight of their choices loomed. What would happen when dawn broke? Would it illuminate the truth, or would it seep into darkness once more? The answers twisted in the air like smoke, and every breath felt like an omen. The final revelation was within reach, and Elaine had but a heartbeat to decide. Elaine's heart thundered in her chest as the woman lunged, a piercing shriek tearing through the air. Time seemed to slow, each second stretching as adrenaline coursed through her veins. The crowd tensed, a gasp swelling like the tide, filled with dread and anticipation. "Stop her!" someone shouted, but fear pinned them to the ground. The figure, still poised with the book, only smiled, the shadows around it growing darker, expanding like an ink stain on the fabric of the night. The woman's body collided with the book, her hands clawing at the pages as if they might tear apart the very fabric of the universe contained within. Suddenly, a crackle of energy whipped through the air like a bolt of lightning. Elaine felt it surge, electrifying her skin, raising the hairs on her arms. The ground quaked again, knocking people off their feet, and shouts erupted in a cacophony of panic. "Get back!" Reverend Miller's voice rose above the chaos, but Elaine felt frozen, rooted to the spot. The woman wrested some force from the book, her face twisting into a mask of rage and agony. Scorching light erupted from the pages, spilling forth like a flood, illuminating the darkness with an eerie blaze. For a fleeting moment, Elaine caught a glimpse of what the figure meant, the duality unfolding in blinding contrast. Shadows and light twirled as the air thickened, wrapping around her like a shroud. She squinted against the brightness, desperate for clarity through the chaos. "Embrace it!" the figure commanded, its voice a haunting whisper woven with temptation. "The truth awaits, but only for the brave." Elaine fought against the rising tide of fear. Should she push forward? Should she wrestle for the knowledge that could expose everything she had ever known? Just as she took a step closer, the figure suddenly turned its attention back to the book. The woman was consumed by the light, screaming as if in a battle against the very forces of existence. What was happening? The air filled with the scent of burning leaves, an old, familiar smell that froze Elaine in place, pulling memories from the corners of her mind. She recalled late nights at her grandmother's house, stories of dark arts and whispered warnings. Hadn't she been urged to stay away from the unknown? Elaine squeezed her eyes shut, struggling to center herself. She could feel the burdens pressing down on her, an entire town's worth of fear and expectation cascading around her. Then the screaming stopped abruptly, plunging them into a haunting silence, the kind that swallows whole the remnants of chaos. With a deep breath, Elaine opened her eyes again. What lay before her was unrecognizable. The woman lay still, the book vacant, utterly empty. The figure stared down, a mixture of amusement and distaste dancing across its gaunt features. "Do you see? Knowledge has a price far greater than realms of treasure," it said softly, turning back to Elaine. Murmurs spread through the crowd, a ripple of disbelief and horror. "What have we unleashed?" Someone whispered. Elaine knew in her gut that a choice had been thrust upon her, not just a question to answer, but a future to decipher. The truth was no longer just a whisper in her ear, it had morphed into a deafening roar. "Will you take the risk and learn what lies beyond the known?" The figure intoned, its eyes drilling into her resolve. The crowd held its breath, waiting for her answer. Elaine's heart raced, and she felt heat creeping back into her cheeks, igniting her spirit with the slightest flicker of resolve. In that moment of silence, it became clear she could not turn back now. The weight of the town's fear, the history echoing in the shadows, all demanded action. But before she could speak, before she could decide, the shadows around the figure stirred. Something was rising, a presence born of the very essence of what had been awakened, a force that thrummed with power and malice, threatening to unravel everything. What had they set in motion? The air thickened with anticipation, and a tense energy coursed through the crowd once more. What would happen next? What would she discover if she stepped into the light? Elaine's decision hung in the air like a pendulum, poised to swing either way, sending ripples into the dark unknown. Elaine stood frozen, breath hitching in her throat, as the shadows coiled around the figure like tendrils of smoke. Eyes, wide and unblinking, searched the crowd. The townsfolk were a mosaic of horror, confusion, and something dangerously close to curiosity. Murmurs turned to whispers, growing louder as the fear pulsed through the gathering like an electric current, raising the stakes of the moment. "Choose, Elaine," the figure urged, its voice dripping with that same haunting allure. "Your chance to know the truth lies ahead, stark as the moon in the blackened sky. But tread carefully, curiosity can be a cruel mistress." Elaine's pulse pounded in her ears. She felt the weight of the decision wrapping around her, each heartbeat reminding her of everything at stake. What if revealing the truth tears apart the very fabric of our lives? The thought, a fleeting specter, threaded through her mind, but it battled against her growing desire for revelation. Could the unknown hold the key to their fears? The ground beneath her feet shifted. An ominous crack echoed like thunder, pulling her out of her spiraling thoughts. The crowd flinched. Reverend Miller raised a hand, but his voice faltered, drowning in the murmurs. The figure's smile morphed into something darker, feeding off the crowd's terror. "Don't you see? What has been hidden is often more powerful than what is known." With a surge of newfound courage, Elaine took a step forward, heart pounding, breath shallow. "What lies beyond? What are you offering?" The words felt foreign, a reckless gamble on her tongue. The figure's gaze sharpened, interest igniting in its eyes, a predator sensing vulnerability. "Knowledge, dear child. Knowledge that can set you free or consume you. But make haste, for the veil flutters between realms. You might find what you seek or lose yourself forever." The air vibrated thick with an almost tangible energy. Elaine clenched her fists. She couldn't stand by while the darkness threatened everything she cared for. "I'm willing to know." The declaration shocked her, reverberating through the crowd. Gasps escaped like trapped birds, fluttering around her. "Then step forward." The figure's voice sliced through the murmurs, beckoning like a siren to a ship lost at sea. With uncertainty rippling in her gut, Elaine stepped forward, the shadows swirling around her like a storm. The crowd drew back as if they feared she might collapse into the expanding void. But as she neared the figure, the air shifted, bathing her in an unfamiliar warmth. The light from the book pulsed, illuminating the depths of the figure's twisted smile. "The price is high, dear Elaine, but the reward it is the rawest truth." Closing her eyes, she inhaled deeply. The scent of burning leaves entrenched itself in her memory, a reminder of every tale her grandmother whispered about the night consuming the good. Vivid images danced behind her eyelids, visions of a time when the world felt safe and full of wonder. Would leaving the known for the unknown shatter those innocent visions? "Elaine!" A voice broke through her reverie, startling her. It was Reverend Miller, desperation coloring his words. "You don't know what you're inviting. Stop." But as she opened her eyes, Elaine felt the shadows pull her in. With a single thought, she realized there was no turning back. The essence of fear danced at the edges of her thoughts, melding with her resolve. As the figure raised the book, the air crackled with energy, and words spilled forth. They pulsed, thrumming in harmony with the beating of her heart, casting a spell that threatened to unravel everything. Elaine gasped, terror gripping her as a vision flickered against the backdrop of her reality, a glimpse into a world where the balance of light and dark tipped uncontrollably. What unseen forces were her decisions awakening? What horrors and truths were waiting just beyond the threshold? In that moment, the specter of the unknown loomed larger than life, and one question lanced through her mind with crystal clarity: if she could uncover the truth, could she also contain it? The shadows surged around her, and Elaine realized the battle had only just begun. The shadows tightened their grip, swirling like a tempest around Elaine, drowning out the gasps of the townsfolk. Her heart raced as her feet instinctively carried her forward, toward the beckoning glow of the figure's book. She felt as though she was plummeting into a chasm, a reckless dive into the unknown. The figure's voice, a chilling melody, echoed in her mind. "Beyond this threshold, Elaine, lies the truth you seek. But wisdom and folly are twin flames, one can illuminate, while the other can incinerate. Choose well." Light erupted from the book, bright and blinding, illuminating faces twisted in fear and fascination. Reverend Miller's hands trembled, a silent plea etched across his brow. "Elaine, listen to me. The truth you chase may become your burden, a chain binding you to darkness." But it was too late. Elaine's fingers brushed against the pages, feeling the electric pulse of hidden knowledge. As the words formed, they unraveled in her mind, a cascade of images, emotions, and revelations. Suddenly, she was no longer in the town square. Visions thrust her into a landscape where light and shadows danced discordantly. What once were idyllic fields lay barren, consumed by a creeping darkness. She gasped. Glimpses of anguished spirits flitted before her, faces twisted in eternal torment as the past murmured secrets long buried. "No." Her voice trembled as she recoiled from the sights. "This isn't what I wanted, I just wanted to understand." The figure leaned closer, its features shrouded in mystery, but its voice was a haunting whisper carried on the wind. "Understanding invites a reckoning. Sometimes, the heart must break before it can truly know." The vision shifted again. Elaine saw her grandmother, a sentinel of light in a landscape consumed by night. Her eyes brimmed with tears. "My dear, you cannot run from what's inside you. The darkness is not simply out there, it resides within the hearts of the people you trust most." The implication struck Elaine like a cold blade. Could it be true? Could the very fabric of her community be woven with the darkest threads of deceit? The whispers of her past, her childhood filled with laughter, morphed into echoes of betrayal. "What have I unleashed?" she gasped, nearly collapsing under the weight of realization. The glow from the book flickered wildly, casting shadows that seemed to reach for her, as if protesting her exploration of the truth. "Stand your ground," the figure commanded, its voice rising like the wail of a storm. You must confront what lies hidden in the hearts of those around you. Only then can you hope to restore the light. Elaine's thoughts spiraled, each question battling for dominance. Was it worth knowing if the truth poisoned her soul? Or was ignorance a more insidious form of blindness? Could she bear the weight of a world unveiled, stripped of deceptions but burdened with the real? Elbows jostled her as townsfolk surged forward. What is happening? What is happening to her? The air almost crackled with their fear, prowling around like a restless lion ready to strike. Elaine took a deep breath. She needed to decide, should she embrace this chilling truth, or flee back into the comforting embrace of ignorance? Each option carved a path into her future, one whispered of revelation, the other promised safety but clouded reality. But as she looked around, faces shifted from concern to something darker, shadows creeping across their features. The question hung thick in the air: what truths had they kept hidden? Just then, the shadows around her deepened, whispering secrets that sent shivers down her spine. She felt a presence behind her, something ancient and powerful, and it wanted her to choose now. Elaine! A voice cried. Don't succumb to the darkness. You have a choice. But as the world around her began to shimmer and distort, she knew that whatever decision she made would herald irreversible change. As a terrifying realization gripped her heart, she whispered a silent prayer, wishing for the strength to withstand whatever lay ahead. The truth awaited, a truth woven with her fate. In that moment, she grasped the weight of her own heart and the hearts of those whose lives she was entwined with. But would she have the courage to face the darkness ahead, or would it consume her whole? As the visions swirled into chaos, a flicker of doubt ignited, and one last question gripped her soul: what if the truth was not what she expected, but a reflection of her greatest fears? Elaine felt an icy grip tighten around her heart. The air vibrated with the weight of unspoken truths, each one prickling at her skin like a swarm of angry wasps. The swirling shadows seemed to pulse and writhe, muting the fear-ridden gasps of her neighbors. They were no longer just spectators, they were complicit in a drama that threatened to unravel everything she understood about her life. Choose! Echoed the figure, its voice resonating like a lost melody in the chaos. The book's glow intensified, illuminating faces from the town, their expressions shifting to reveal fleeting glimpses of remorse, anger, and desperation. Reverend Miller's eyes were wide, glistening with a mixture of fear and something akin to resolve. What if I choose wrong? Elaine's voice cracked, fear gnawing at her insides. The decision felt monumental, even cosmic, and she sensed the stakes stretching far beyond her own fate. A low murmur swept through the crowd. This isn't right, someone whispered. She mustn't. The shadows thickened, and Elaine remembered her grandmother's wisdom. Was it really worth chasing after truth if it unveiled a horrifying reality? A flicker of recognition ignited within her. It was not about the truth or the lies, it was about facing the darkness within herself and, perhaps, within those she held dear. Confront what lies hidden. The figure urged, its presence both menacing and magnetic. With a deep breath that tasted of impending doom, Elaine stepped closer to the book. The figures before her blurred into one chaotic mass of human experience, their fears and hopes blending into a single entity. Suddenly, the pages flipped violently on their own, casting a shimmering light that painted the town square in hues of gold and crimson. A voice boomed from the depths of nowhere, "You must see beyond the veil, Elaine." The light dissolved into an image. She beheld a memory: her laughter with the children at the park, their innocent faces bright with joy. It shifted, darkening, revealing a confrontation with a classmate who had betrayed her trust. The feeling of shock coursed through her veins like ice water. Trust, she gasped, the realization striking her like thunder. The innocent laughter masked the hidden treachery that lurked even in those she loved. Even her dearest friends had secrets, burdens they carried without her knowledge. What if their smiles hid fears just as dark as the shadows surrounding them? The figure stepped forward, revealing a face she recognized beneath layers of shadow. It was her own, distorted and trembling, flawed like everyone around her. You must choose the path of courage, or the chains of this deception will shackle you, it warned. Elaine faltered, trapped in the dizzying duality of her surroundings, torn between the vibrant memories and the encroaching darkness. What if I can't bear it? She whispered. What if unraveling these truths tears us apart? Only when you see them, will you find the way to mend, it replied, echoing her grandmother's words. She clenched her fists, and the realization struck her again with greater clarity. If she couldn't confront the darkness inside herself, how could she stand against the shadows in her town? And then, in a flicker of gut-wrenching intensity, the book burst open, spilling waves of light and shadow around her. The whispers crescendoed into a roar as visions of betrayal, despair, and fleeting joy blended into a harrowing symphony that shook her very core. As tears welled in her eyes, Elaine felt herself caught between two worlds, the one she knew and the one that could very well crumble. The shadows stretched, reaching toward her with hands of swirling darkness, begging her to decide before it faded back into night. Desperation clawing at her throat, she shouted, "I want the truth." But the moment hung heavy, suspended in the air like a fragile dream. The figure watched her, its eyes darkening, cloaked in evening mist. Then prepare yourself, Elaine. A reckoning is at hand. As she braced herself for whatever storm awaited, one last haunting thought flickered uninvited in her mind. What if the truth she sought was bound to unleash a darkness she could never contain? The shadows loomed, all-consuming, as she stepped closer toward the brink of a revelation. The enormity of it seemed almost sinister. It wasn't just about her anymore, it was about the very soul of her community. What lay ahead? Would she stand resolute amidst the chaos, or would she succumb to the insatiable hunger of the darkness? The ground trembled beneath Elaine's feet, as if the earth itself was asserting its own twisted urgency. Her heart raced, each beat a desperate plea for clarity amid the chaos. The faces in the crowd shifted, the glow from the book casting sinister shadows that danced along the cobblestones. The air thickened, mingling an acrid scent of fear with the smell of damp earth after a long-awaited rain. Elaine. A voice pierced through the whirlwind of emotions. It was Darla, her closest friend, desperation etched into her features. Don't do this. You don't know what there I have to. Elaine interrupted, her lips trembling. If I don't face this, who will? Each word felt heavy, as if she were carving them into stone with her breath. The figure, her own distorted image, loomed larger, its form flickering like a faulty light bulb. The truth is a force, Elaine. It both heals and destroys. Just as it spoke, the book opened wider, unleashing a cascade of shadow that wrapped around her like smoke. Cold and unyielding, the Reverend stepped forward, his eyes alight with an unsettling conviction. We must protect her from this darkness. This is not the answer. His voice trembled, revealing cracks beneath the surface of authority. But his protests felt like pushing against a tidal wave. The shadows pulsated with voices from the past, each one a bittersweet reminder of the ties that bound her to her hometown. Laughter and cries intermingled, painting a distorted picture of safety amidst the fear. Could she be their savior, or would she become a harbinger of further despair? With trembling hands, she reached for the book, its pages vibrating with energy. A swirl of images flooded her mind, betrayal not just from her friends, but also from those she trusted most, family members hiding their own burdens. The sheer weight of it all nearly knocked her back. "What have you done?" was a scream echoing from within her, swallowed whole by the cacophony of shadows. "Choose wisely, or risk it all," the figure warned. Each word dripped with foreboding, as if it held all the secrets of the universe within its grasp. Tears streamed down her cheeks. Was it possible that confronting these truths could bridge the gaps between them, or would that lead them all to ruin? Just then, the colors shifted again, and the crowd around her began to whisper her name, a low chant that rose into a fever pitch. Each syllable gave life to the weight of every hidden secret. Elaine's mind raced. What if I say I want to see? To know? The question hung in the air, charged and electric. She remembered her grandmother's stories, the warnings of truths that could shatter foundations. She could tread carefully or dive in head first, each choice a potential point of no return. "Do you wish to bear the truth, Elaine?" The figure insisted, its dark eyes boring into her soul. "I must know," she replied, her voice steadier now. She felt an odd sense of power surging within her, overshadowing the overwhelming fear. Suddenly, the crowd gasped, their eyes widened, and she could feel the tremors of anticipation vibrating through them as the book began to glow more intensely. The shadows swirled tighter, a vortex of doubt and fear threatening to pull her under. Just as she felt she would drown in it, the glow pivoted, casting everything in a brilliant light, and then, the images exploded into a whirlwind of color and sound. Memories flashed by at lightning speed. Each moment flashed like a painful wound, burdened with betrayal and festering resentment, the life she once knew blurring into something unreadable. But among those images, something even more shocking emerged, a face she could hardly believe, twisted with betrayal but rooted deep in her heart. Elaine stumbled back, nearly collapsing under the weight of it. "No. It can't be," she gasped, the realization hitting her like a freight train. But the truth was undeniable, it was there, glaring back at her in the heart of the storm. Just as she opened her mouth to proclaim it, silence descended upon the square. The stillness hung in the air, thick and suffocating. A deep breath held before the plunge. Darla's voice broke the tension. "Elaine. You don't have to do this alone." But the moment had already shifted. The shadows recoiled, and the figure's face was now both hers and another, flashing back and forth like a reflection in a shattered mirror. With dread swirling in the pit of her stomach, she knew the next step would plunge her deeper into the darkness that enveloped not just her, but all she cherished. As she took a shuddering breath, the next question formed silently on her lips: if she peeled back the layers of betrayal, would she find salvation, or merely ignite a blaze that consumed everything? The weight of the decision loomed, the shadowy figure watching her with eyes like dark pits, ready for her to tip the balance. What would she find when she stepped into the truth? And were the bonds forged in love strong enough to withstand its fire? As her heart thundered in her chest, Elaine felt time stretch and bend. The next moment awaited before her, pulling her toward the precipice, leaving her gasping for the release that neither light nor shadow could offer. Elaine's breath caught in her throat as the images pulsed and flickered before her like a kaleidoscope of chaos, each fragment a slice of her past laid bare. The crowd held its collective breath, their eyes wide in anticipation, a sea of uncertainty pressing in around her. Was it courage or madness that pushed her forward? The truth felt like a steel cable tightening around her heart. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice barely a whisper, trembling yet fierce, battling the rising tide of shadow. The figure in front of her, the reflection of herself, smiled a cruel, mocking smile. "I am the embodiment of all you fear and all you desire. To truly understand, you must confront what lies within." "Stop!" Darla cried, breaking through the veil of silence, panic edging her voice. "You don't know what you're risking." But the shadow didn't waver. Instead, it edged closer, tendrils of darkness curling like smoke, cocooning Elaine in its chilling embrace. The air grew thick, suffocating, filled with the scent of dampness and decay. "The truth will consume you if you let it," it hissed, the soft whisper slithering into her ears. The crowd erupted into murmurs, their unease palpable. "What is she doing? This isn't a game." The Reverend's voice rose above the clamor, desperate and raspy. "Elaine, come back from the brink. We can work through this." But with every heartbeat, the shadows swirled faster, and the world outside her began to fade, blurring into a cacophony of sound and color. The weight of her choices pressed down like lead, each second stretching into eternity. Who could she trust now? "Show me," she commanded, her voice slicing through the noise, every ounce of her will focused on the figure. "I want to see the truth. Lay it bare before me." With a sudden, jarring crack, the light shattered into a spectrum of colors, a blinding flash that left her reeling. Before her appeared a tableau of faces, each one crumpled in anguish, each one familiar but twisted by despair. Memories she had buried alive surged forth like bile from her throat, each one a reminder of betrayal that forged invisible shackles around her heart. Her grandfather's visage appeared, a trusted figure now marred by an act of cruelty she never knew. The realization enveloped her, a knot tightening in her gut. No more hiding. No more running. This was the moment where her past met her present, a collision of truths screaming for acknowledgement. "Do you see?" The shadow figure taunted, its voice swirling like the smoke it materialized from. "Each shadow in your life carries the weight of a secret. What will you do with that knowledge?" Elaine's mind reeled, suffocating under layers of revelations. "I will expose them," she shouted, feeling a rush of defiance wash over her. "I will not let their darkness define me." As if responding to her resolve, the air crackled, and the shadows recoiled in mock retreat. But the figure drew closer again, pressing her to put words to her pain. "Dare you face the consequences? Dare you lose everything to find your truth?" "Yes," she yelled, fueled by a newfound strength, her voice rising in the tumult. The crowd watched in rapt fascination, the tension mounting like a coiled spring ready to snap. "Then brace yourself," the figure murmured, its eyes aflame with a darkness that throbbed within her. "Truth unveils, truth shatters. You will find your freedom in the ruins." And in that moment, Elaine felt the ground beneath her pulse like a heartbeat, a raw warning echoing through the cobblestones. The book in her hands flickered more brightly as the shadows lunged, desperate to keep their secrets hidden. The crowd gasped collectively as the world around her began shifting again, the sky darkening while she struggled against the tide that threatened to drown her. Would she truly stand tall in the aftermath, or become lost to the fire? The air turned electric with uncertainty, sparks of fear igniting in her chest. At that moment, she realized she was teetering on the edge of a precipice, ready to either soar or plummet into a chasm of chaos, before she could take a step forward. A bone-chilling roar echoed across the square, slicing through the tension like a knife. Eyes widened in terror as the shadows seemed to solidify, forming a creature of nightmare and wrath, a beast born of the very truths she sought to reveal. "Are you ready, Elaine?" It growled, dark and menacing, as darkness surged forth to embrace her. The choice was no longer hers. What would rise from the ashes of her past? Would she fight, or would she fall prey to it? The line between sacrifice and salvation blurred as she took a defiant stance, heart-pounding. What lay ahead was the revelation that would shatter everything. Elaine's heart thundered in her chest as the creature loomed over her, a mass of swirling shadows and greed-fueled malice. It was the architect of her deepest fears, manifesting before her in a way that felt all too real. The crowd's gasps echoed in her ears, a mix of horror and disbelief that perpetrated the tense atmosphere. "Fight it!" a voice shouted, breaking through the fear like a lighthouse cutting through a storm. It was Darla, her expression a blend of concern and determination, forcing her way through the throng toward Elaine. "You have the strength to face it. Don't let fear consume you." Darla's words tugged at Elaine, threading a tiny spark of hope through the heavy cloak of dread that threatened to envelop her. "This is your moment," she shouted, her voice trembling yet fierce, a rallying cry against despair. As the creature snarled, flickering its darkened maw, it seemed to absorb the shadows of those around them, fueling itself on the fear emanating from the witnesses. Elaine could feel the crowd's anxiety like a thick fog rolling in, and it threatened to choke her. What were they feeling? Panic? Sympathy? Or perhaps a morbid curiosity about her fate? Focusing on Darla's urging, Elaine summoned the last remnants of her inner strength. "You want to take me," she declared, her voice rising above the whispered doubts swirling around her. She clenched the book tighter, feeling its weight anchoring her to reality, anchoring her to truth. "I refuse to be a prisoner of my past." The beast's jagged smile widened, revealing jagged teeth sharper than knives. "You call this truth?" it roared, each word reverberating against her consciousness. You can't possibly think you can unearth what lies beneath so easily. With every shout from the figure, Elaine felt the shadows encroaching, chipping away at her resolve. Images flared at the edges of her vision, faces twisted in anguish, voices echoing with accusations. But she grasped onto those feelings, she wouldn't let them bury her. I know what you are. She screamed defiantly. You are the darkness I've carried, the pain I've buried. You have no power over me. As she spoke, the air thickened, the shadows flickering rapidly, almost as if the creature was caught off guard by her fierce retort. And in that heartbeat, Elaine realized the shadows were not enemies to be vanquished but pieces of herself that needed acknowledgement. Darla's voice cut through the noise again, firm and powerful. Remember who you are, Elaine. You are not this shadow. You are light and love and everything you choose to be. Elaine's chest tightened, a lump forming in her throat as Darla's words ignited a flame inside her. The flickering shadows recoiled, as if they felt her inner strength pulling the darkness apart. The echoes of her past left their haunt, transforming into keys, unlocking the chains that had bound her for so long. With a deep breath, she inhaled the courage that coursed through her veins. I embrace my truth. She yelled, her voice resonating with raw power. I embrace my pain, my errors, my losses, and my freedom. In that split second, something cracked within the creature. The roiling mass of fear began to segment, as if Elaine's declaration aggravated its very existence. The crowd collectively drew in breath, their eyes wide with disbelief. Did they feel it too, this shift in the air? But before she could process what was happening, the creature lunged, trying to reassert its malefic grip. You will regret this. It hissed, fury twisting its form. Elaine stumbled back, visions swirling, when suddenly, a blinding light burst forth from the book in her hand, so fierce it shadowed everything else. The light enveloped her, and in that moment, as the shadows screamed in agony, a deep sensation hit her, salvation. The shadow figure began to dissolve, piece by piece. With every fragment that faded, Elaine's heart beat stronger, excitement and terror swirling within her. But what remained in the void was something darker, a whisper that sent chills down her spine. You think this is the end? There's something far worse waiting in the depths. The last remnants of the creature vanished, leaving behind a lingering sense of foreboding that filled the air even as the light blazed around her. Elaine felt the crowd's collective energy shift, their expressions shifting from shock to confusion. She was standing taller, she could feel it. But the chill that gripped her heart warned her this battle was far from over. What other dark truths lay hidden, waiting for the chance to surge forward? Her hands trembled as she slowly opened the book again. This time, something felt different, something much heavier than before. This is when the journey truly began. What would she uncover next? The light began to flicker and dim, but the echoes of Elaine's declaration rang through the crowd like a bell. As the shadows receded, whispers transformed into murmurings of hope, defiance, and relief. Reverend Miller stepped forward, eyes wide with truth dawning upon him. We must confront our own darkness, he said, voice trembling yet resolute. No longer can we hide beneath a veil of silence. We are all interconnected in this struggle. Elaine's breath hitched as she felt the power of his words weave through the remnants of fear. The creatures that had held them captive were still lurking, she knew that. But now, there was a way forward. The townsfolk, still caught in an uneasy mix of emotions, began to share their fears aloud. Murmurs of betrayal, mistrust, and guilt rolled through the street like thunder. Speak it. Share your truth. Elaine encouraged, her voice gaining strength with every passing heartbeat. One by one, people stepped forward. Darla, with tears streaking down her cheeks, broke the silence. I was afraid of being judged for the dark thoughts I've had, she confessed. I thought if I voiced them, they would consume me, a fire I couldn't control. The crowd nodded, the tension in the air twisting into something light, a gathering moment of collective understanding. The unease slipped from their shoulders, as if burdened souls were finally taking flight. I thought I was the only one, a voice from the back called out, a familiar face emerging. I thought I had to wear a mask, that no one would accept my flaws. But if Elaine can face her truth, so can I. With that, a wave of vulnerability surged through the gathering, sending reverberations of courage through the fabric of Beacon Ridge. Strangers turned into allies, each voice echoing the fear that had once silenced them. As tales of hardship and hidden pains filled the air, Elaine felt the weight lifting. These shadows were part of life, denying them only fed their power. If they could face their collective truths, perhaps they could reshape the very core of their community. The figure, whose haunting presence had once ensnared them all, had been defeated, but now it was time for reconciliation. The book in her hands pulsed lightly, beckoning her to continue digging deeper. What now? She whispered, the question lingering like incense in the air. Reverend Miller finally lifted his voice, silencing the murmurs that had filled the street. The shadows may always exist, but we devote ourselves to confronting them together. And we will rebuild. With newfound determination and an emboldened spirit, the townsfolk began to discuss how they would move forward, hands clasped, hearts open, forging a path for Beacon Ridge that rekindled connection and trust. Elaine felt warmth wash over her, recognizing their collective strength seeping into her. She was not alone in this. As the night deepened, the clock tower chimed once more, signaling the arrival of a new dawn. We can write our own story, she declared, smiling. We will learn from the past but create a brighter future that acknowledges everyone's truth. The crowd erupted in a chorus of agreement, facing the coming day with hope, a testament to their resilience. Just then, the air turned crisp and bright, the heaviness giving way to a promise of renewal. Shadows flitted to the edges of their vision, but now they wouldn't retreat into ignorance or decay. They would blossom in unison, sparking a conversation that had long been avoided, making room for healing in the hearts of those who had stayed silent for far too long. Taking a step back, Elaine raised her hands, wide open, a gesture of acceptance, an invitation for more truths to rise. With the dawn breaking behind her, she realized this was only the beginning. The revelations were theirs to embrace. Thank you all, she said, her voice steady now. Thank you for allowing the light back in. And as she looked around at the faces in the crowd, each one uniquely beautiful in its imperfection, a lump formed in her throat. Something had shifted, something indelible and powerful. Together, they could weather any storm, and every truth acknowledged would strengthen their bonds. With a collective breath, they took their first steps into their new tomorrow, hearts rekindled, shadows dancing cautiously at their feet. We dare you to not miss this journey. Subscribe immediately to stay connected. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments with your reactions and feelings about this powerful ending. And share this with at least 5 friends who need to see how we can face our truths together. Don't wait another second, your support means everything.